creation. I love that sentence.
Well, that was Augustine, and there was many others who actually talk about two books of creation. And Augustine develops this, the big book and the little book. The big book is creation, and the little book is scripture. And, says Augustine, never can the two contradict because they have the same author. So, if they appear to contradict, you've got to read both more deeply. And that is a much needed theology for the modern world in which we are desecrating the big book of creation in unimaginable and horrific ways, right? So how do we address it? A point, though, about the staticness of God, I do think that the notion of Trinity helps to insist that God isn't static. That one of the early ways of talking about the Trinity is perichoresis. Peri means around in Greek. Choresis is where we get the word choreography from, to dance. So perichoresis is to dance around. And it basically says that the Father, Son, and Spirit are just constantly interpenetrating one another, dancing around, entering one another, pouring oneself out into the next, and this whole thing. So that it preserves this notion of God as eternal relationship without multiplicity. So God is at God's very heart relational. And the very image that we bear in our hearts is to drive us toward relationality. That's why we find relationships fulfilling, because we are embodying that divine perichoresis, that divine dance. So, yeah, beautiful. Mostly at the end of the day, Augustine also says, at the end, we know God as unknowable. Nicholas of Cusa, 14th century, says, we come to what he calls docta ignorantia, learned ignorance. Aquinas, after all that he wrote, the tomes and tomes, the last 2 years of his life said, I refuse to write or say another word. He stayed silent until he died. And he told his scribes, burn it all in straw. And every seminarian says, dang, I should have done it. But I mean, so the idea is all of this verbosity leads ultimately to not knowing. The mystics say you can't know God in the mind, only apprehend God in the heart. And the close to the mind is too crude. Final question, and then we'll close. Yes.
So sometimes when I'm at church and I'm listening to the gospel, I'm listening to my pastor's sermon, I'm not really in my head. I'm not really fully understanding what's being said to me, what the teachings are. So I feel like I'm underneath. So it's not so intellectual, but it's more underneath. And I'll just cry, or I'll just be moved, and then it'll just be over, meaning, I'll carry on with my day. But I would not say, so it's not really a question, but just sort of wanted to share the experience that it's not so intellectual, but sometimes as I'm listening to you today, it's fascinating to have clarity with the spiritual and the intellectual. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Because sometimes it just goes so fast.
I know.
And it's like, what happened? And what were they saying?
I know. Well, I just want to affirm as a final statement, when you feel that and move to that place of tears, there's actually a word for that the mothers and fathers of the desert call penthos. And that is the purification, almost like a catharsis or a knowing in the heart that leads to just joy or being moved on some level. And that movement is an authentic place of knowing even when you don't have words for it. And when you do hear words, and you resonate with those words, it isn't because, say, I or some other speaker taught you. It's because you already knew it in your heart, and we just helped put words on what was already there. It just needed to be named. That's why it resonates. There's a string just waiting for somebody to do that, but the string is there. So let those tears be that string, and just be in them. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for your time.
All that we have tried to imagine and resonate with and in our hearts and in our heads. You're welcome to stay and visit a little while. We have a concert here this afternoon, and they are arriving at 12:30 to get ready. So about a half an hour. No rush, they aren't all coming at once. But there are tickets available at 2:30 and 7:30. The Mayflower Chorus are presenting a wonderful concert. I went to the performance last night. So if you're looking for joyful music, come to that. So we will plan to have a Saturday morning retreat this fall. We haven't confirmed who the speaker will be. And then a major event probably in February coming. So look on our website, call the church. We'll keep in touch with you. But thank you for coming today.
By the way, St. Columbus is doing a ecological retreat at the end of June. It will have my bishop, Bishop Mark Andrus. He and his wife have been very huge advocates of ecological discipleship, but also Reverend Ambrose Carroll, who comes from the Berkeley Green the Church movement. He's an African-American pastor who kind of unites the